A white woman called the police to report a black teenager. But when the boy's mother arrived, she was stunned, because that woman was none other than the city's mayor. A peaceful afternoon at the park suddenly turned into a flashpoint of tension. Invisible biases ignited an incident far beyond imagination, drawing everyone into a confrontation between truth and mistaken assumptions. What happens when a single action exposes a deep-seated issue in society? Follow this gripping and emotional story to see how one moment can transform not just a life, but an entire community. If you enjoy meaningful and inspiring stories, don't forget to subscribe for more. The story begins. Carter leaned against the oak tree, soaking in the golden rays of the afternoon sun at Oakwood Park. He took a deep breath, savoring the scent of freshly cut grass mingled with the blooming flowers. His mother had promised to pick him up early. While waiting, he let his thoughts wander, adrift in the quiet serenity of the park. But a sudden prickling sensation at the back of his neck snapped him out of his daydreams. Opening his eyes, Carter scanned the park until his gaze landed on a middle-aged white woman seated on a nearby bench. Linda, as he would later learn her name, stared at him with a piercing, distrustful gaze. Her lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. Her eyes narrowed even further as she rose from the bench, her movements stiff and deliberate. "What are you doing here?" Linda asked, her tone sharp and accusatory. "This is a family park, not a place for troublemakers. Leave now or I'll call the police." The weight of her words hit Carter like a punch to the chest. A tangled wave of confusion and anger surged within him. "Ma'am, I haven't done anything wrong," Carter replied, doing his best to keep his voice calm. "I'm just waiting for my mom. I have every right to be here." Linda's face flushed with indignation. She shoved her hand into her pocket, pulling out her phone with trembling fingers. Carter's eyes widened in disbelief as the scene unfolded before him. Slowly, he stood, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. "Please, ma'am, there's no need for this," he pleaded, his voice tinged with fear. "I'm telling the truth. My mom will be here any minute." But Linda had made up her mind. With an air of smug determination, she dialed 911, her gaze fixed on Carter like a hawk. "Hello? I need to report a suspicious teenager in Oakwood Park," she said into the phone, her voice cutting through the tranquil afternoon air. Carter stood frozen, a chilling fear spreading through his body. Linda continued the call, painting him as a threat with every word she spoke. He felt the crushing weight of injustice pressing down on him. He hadn't done anything, he was merely existing in a public space. His presence in the park was deemed suspicious solely because of the color of his skin. The harsh reality slammed into Carter, and he knew that in just a few minutes the police would arrive. He also knew all too well how such encounters could quickly escalate into danger for young black men like himself. Silently, he prayed that his mother would arrive in time. At the same time, he tried to steel himself for whatever was about to unfold, his heart pounding in his chest. The screech of tires shattered the park's quiet calm. 2 police cars sped onto the scene, their alternating red and blue lights casting an eerie glow across Oakwood Park. Carter's heart pounded, a shiver running down his spine as he watched the officers step out of their vehicles. He had seen countless videos of similar situations ending badly, and now he found himself at the center of one. The officers approached with deliberate, measured steps, their eyes scanning the area. Carter remained perfectly still, his hands visible at his sides, recalling his mother's advice about interacting with law enforcement. "What's going on here?" one tall officer asked, his gaze darting between Carter and Linda. Linda stepped forward, her words tumbling out in a rush. "This young man has been loitering here for hours. I asked him to leave, but he wouldn't. I'm concerned for the safety of the families here." Carter felt a surge of anger at Linda's distorted version of events. He opened his mouth to speak, but the second officer cut him off. "We'll get to you in a moment, son," the officer said, his tone making it clear Carter's side of the story was not the priority. The officers turned their attention to Linda, questioning her while she nodded and embellished her account. With each passing minute, Carter felt the situation slipping further out of his control. Eventually, they turned to him, their expressions wary. "All right, young man," the first officer said. "Explain yourself. What are you doing here?" Carter took a deep breath. "I'm just waiting for my mom to pick me up," he explained, keeping his voice steady. "I come here often. I wasn't bothering anyone." The two officers exchanged a look. "Do you have any identification on you?" the second officer asked, his hand resting on his belt. "No, sir," Carter replied, knowing how bad this would sound. "I'm only 14. I don't have a driver's license." The questioning continued, their tone growing more skeptical and the rapid-fire questions overwhelming Carter. He felt the tension building as the officers' stances became increasingly rigid. A small crowd had begun to gather nearby, with some people holding up their phones to record the unfolding scene. Carter's anxiety spiked at the thought of this humiliating moment potentially spreading online. Just as it seemed the situation was about to spiral out of control, the low rumble of an approaching car engine drew everyone's attention. A sleek black SUV rolled to a stop at the park's entrance. The officers' expressions shifted instantly as the car door swung open. Their eyes widened with recognition. Relief washed over Carter. His mother had arrived. Mayor Victoria Hayes stepped out of the SUV, her demeanor stern yet commanding. Her presence drew every gaze in the park. Carter noticed the officers, straightening up while Linda's mouth fell open, her face a canvas of shock and realization. The atmosphere grew taut, charged with the understanding that the dynamic of this confrontation was about to change dramatically. Mayor Victoria Hayes strode toward the group with an air of authority. The park fell silent as her eyes swept across the scene, pausing briefly on her son. Carter exhaled quietly, but the tension in his mother's jaw made it clear that the matter was far from over. "What is going on here?" Her voice sliced through the quiet, each word precise and commanding. The officers immediately stiffened, their earlier confidence dissolving. Linda's accusatory stance crumbled under the weight of the mayor's icy gaze. Mayor Hayes surveyed the scene, the police cars, the gathering crowd, and her son, standing rigidly with fear still evident in his posture. "I want an explanation," she demanded, her tone brooking no argument. "Why are you questioning my son in a public park?" The tall officer cleared his throat, his former authority replaced by hesitation. "Ma'am, we received a call reporting a suspicious individual." "Suspicious?" Mayor Hayes interrupted, one eyebrow arching. "What exactly made my son look suspicious?" Linda stepped forward, her voice trembling. "He was just lingering here for hours." "I thought you thought what?" The mayor's voice remained soft, but it carried a blade-like sharpness. "That a black teenager in a public park must be up to no good?" Linda's face turned crimson, the certainty in her voice evaporating. Mayor Hayes turned back to the officers, her gaze a mix of disappointment and steely resolve. "Officers, this situation has exposed a serious problem. Did you consider the possibility of bias in the report? Did you approach my son with the presumption of innocence, as you would any other citizen?" A heavy silence hung over the group. Placing a steadying hand on Carter's shoulder, the mayor's voice softened. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" Carter nodded, the tightness in his chest finally beginning to ease. "I'm okay, Mom," he said, his voice steady despite the lingering fear. Mayor Victoria Hayes turned to the crowd, her gaze unwavering. "This incident underscores the urgent need for comprehensive anti-bias training within our police force and our community. No child should ever feel criminalized simply for existing in a public space." Her eyes shifted to Linda, their sternness cutting through the silence. "I hope this serves as a wake-up call. Your unfounded suspicions could have led to devastating consequences. We all need to confront our biases and work toward building a community where everyone feels safe and welcome." The mayor's words seemed to hang in the air, altering the atmosphere in the park. The officers, clearly recognizing their error, stepped back from Carter. Linda muttered an apology, her gaze fixed firmly on the ground. Turning to the gathered crowd, Mayor Hayes spoke with conviction. "Let this be a lesson. We must do better. Change begins with each of us, facing our biases and standing against injustice. With her final words, she gently guided Carter back toward the SUV, leaving behind a park full of people with much to reflect on. As they walked away, Carter felt a mix of relief and pride. His mother's intervention hadn't just protected him. It might have sparked the change their community so desperately needed. Though the park incident was over, its ripple effects spread through the community. Mayor Victoria Hayes understood that this moment could either deepen divides or ignite a call for genuine progress. With Carter beside her, she turned back to the growing crowd. What we witnessed today, she began, her voice resonating through the park, is a reflection of a deeper issue in our society: racial bias. The crowd fell silent, hanging on her every word. Far too often, we allow unfounded fears to dictate our actions, resulting in serious consequences for innocent people. Carter, still shaken but gathering his courage, spoke up. "I was just sitting here, enjoying a beautiful day," he said, his voice growing stronger with each word. "In a matter of minutes, I went from feeling safe to feeling like a criminal. That's wrong." The sincerity in Carter's words resonated deeply with the crowd. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathering, accompanied by nods of understanding. Linda, the woman who had called the police, stepped forward, her face flushed with embarrassment. She spoke in a quiet, shaky voice. "I didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to keep the park safe." Mayor Victoria's eyes narrowed. "The important thing, ma'am, is that it shouldn't matter whose child it is. Everyone deserves to exist in public spaces without being seen as a criminal." Turning back to the crowd, she raised her voice with conviction. "This incident makes it clear that we have more work to do. Today, I'm announcing the implementation of a comprehensive anti-bias training program for our police force and all city employees." The announcement elicited mixed reactions. Some people nodded in approval, while others exchanged skeptical glances. A man near the front of the crowd spoke up. "How is a training program going to actually change anything?" Mayor Victoria met his gaze, acknowledging the weight of the question. "Anti-bias training is not a magic solution, but it's an essential first step. It raises awareness and equips public servants with tools to recognize and confront their own biases." This incident is a stark reminder of how assumptions can escalate into dangerous situations in an instant. As the crowd continued to discuss and debate, Mayor Victoria turned back to Carter. In the quiet moment between them, she pulled him into a hug and said softly, "I'm so proud of you." Carter leaned into her embrace, feeling a mix of exhaustion and comfort. He took a deep breath, relief spreading through his chest. "Do you think things can really change, Mom?" he asked quietly. Mayor Victoria looked into his eyes, her voice steady and full of determination. "Change has never been easy, but moments like this can be the spark for real progress. We just have to be brave enough to keep the conversation going." As they returned to the SUV, the park behind them buzzed with lively discussions. It was clear that what had just unfolded had struck a chord with everyone present. The incident compelled the community to confront the harsh realities of racial bias. The conversations ignited in the park that day would echo through City Hall, police precincts, and around dinner tables in the weeks to come, planting seeds of awareness and hope for a better future. The sun slowly dipped below the horizon, its fading light casting long shadows across Oakwood Park. The echoes of that fateful afternoon continued to ripple through the community. Mayor Victoria Hayes' words lingered in the minds of those who had witnessed the event, exposing the undercurrent of racial tension that had quietly simmered beneath the surface. In the days that followed, conversations erupted across the city. Residents began confronting uncomfortable truths about their own biases, reevaluating interactions they had once considered harmless. Local newspapers delved into the roots of racial prejudice, while community leaders organized public forums to address the issue head-on. For Carter, still processing the weight of what he had endured, solace came in an unexpected place: his school's debate club. When he shared his story, his classmates listened intently, their wide eyes betraying their realization of how serious and pervasive the problem was. His experience became a stark reminder that the fight against bias was far from over, even in a town often seen as progressive. Meanwhile, Mayor Victoria Hayes pressed forward with her plan for comprehensive anti-bias training, facing resistance but remaining resolute. "We cannot afford to stay complacent," she repeated during interviews and council meetings. "Every injustice chips away at the foundation of trust our community is built upon." Over time, small but meaningful changes began to take root. Police officers became more involved in community outreach programs, fostering dialogue and mutual understanding. Local businesses displayed signs promoting inclusivity. A new mural was painted in Oakwood Park, celebrating the city's diversity and resilience. The words of civil rights leader Darius Mitchell struck a powerful chord. "There are thousands of black men behind bars, wrongfully accused. That's why addressing incidents like this is so critical." The incident at Oakwood Park became a wake-up call, challenging everyone to confront their own biases and take active steps toward building a more equitable society. The road ahead was neither smooth nor short, but it was a path the community knew they had to follow. "Our response to injustice will shape the world we live in," Mayor Hayes declared, "and silence is no longer an option." This story serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of fairness, empathy, and the courage to confront societal biases. Have you ever had to stand up for what's right, even knowing it would be difficult? Share your thoughts or experiences in the comments. Your story might inspire someone else to take a stand for positive change. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to share it with friends and family to spread the message of equity and understanding. Thank you for taking the time to read and reflect with us. Let's work together to build a community rooted in love and mutual respect. Every small step we take contributes to creating a better world. Wishing you peace and happiness always. Thank you for supporting the channel. Please like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with the latest content. These stories are curated from various sources and do not represent any specific individual or organization. They are shared to promote the human values that bind us all and have been reimagined with the assistance of AI. If there are any errors, we hope you'll overlook them with understanding. Wishing you all the best in life.